Hey everybody, it's Josh Dorkin from BiggerPockets.com again, here with another great real estate investor video interview. Today we're going to talk to Mark Updegraff. Mark's up in Rochester, New York, and he can be found on BiggerPockets at Slackadelic. It's BiggerPockets.com/users/Slackadelic, and of course his website is wedgeredux.com. And Mark, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on board.
Hey, no problem.
So Rochester, huh? Is that where you got your start real estate investing, or
It is.
it
I
is?
bought my first property on Gregory Street here in Rochester, New York, about 4 years ago now.
Okay, right on. Was that a buy and hold, or
Yeah, doing all buy and hold.
you are? Okay, so strictly buy and hold strategy. What got you started? 4 years ago, you and I had spoken. You were in engineering, and I guess what inspired you to start getting into the property game?
Well, I had been working in Rochester all through college. When I first came to college, I was at Wegmans, and then RIT is very co-op oriented, so I got two co-ops, got really good experience, worked at NASA out in Cleveland, worked at a local company here, Jumitat African Art Gallery, and then after I got my initial bachelor's degree in tech photo, I went out and worked for Kodak, where I got laid off, and I worked for Pictometry, where I got laid off, which was pretty discouraging,
Mm.
given that I was very motivated to really go out there and use what I learned in the workforce. So I found a job at RIT in imaging science, which was pretty good because I had done tech photo as my background. I took that job, worked there for 5 years, got my master's in color science, thinking,
Yours.
hey, another degree, I should be able to go out and attack the job market again. So landed a really great job at ITT, loved it, was very motivated. I was trying to push ideas through business development. I had really great ideas that were very novel, and my algorithms were getting used, but they lost a legacy contract, and due to the structure of their organization and the just the waste that goes on in that kind of organization when they don't have clear leadership, I was eliminated with one of the masses. So at that point, I had already started my business back in 2009, formally as an LLC. And like I said to you earlier, I went to work for my father for a few weeks. He works in the trucking industry. That didn't really work out with my interests, so we formed a new company, and that's what we've been doing ever since.
Gotcha.
Buy and hold right now, aspiring to develop real property.
Okay. Okay. Well, clearly you're one of the more intelligent folks out there. Lots
I
of
don't know about
degrees,
that.
lots of engineering, lots of smarts happening. So no,
Yeah.
that's great. So what got you? What made you decide on buy and hold versus flipping, rehabbing, wholesaling? One of the
Uh,
other various strategies.
I read Cash Flow Quadrant book, the Rich Dad Poor Dad
Yep.
series, the second book. I had been recommended that by one of my co-op guys who I worked for. They're like, oh, just read this book. And I kind of just was like, whatever, never read it. Started thinking about real estate a little bit, so I picked up the book at the library, read it, read a couple of his other books, and then that really just shifted my mentality into I need to start building something
Yeah.
that is going to sustain. So I started saving, stopped spending money on coffees, and we stopped going out and just saving as much capital as possible to buy our first property.
Great.
And then once I figured out that it's really not that hard to make sacrifices and to, live a little bit more frugally just because you have an end goal in mind, it got really exciting. So
Yeah.
after the first property, I went in, I rehabbed it myself. We got robbed while we were there, so I lost about $7, $8, $9,000 worth of tools.
Yeah.
It took, got tenants in. It took a couple months to renovate it. It was a good learning experience, but then I could really start focusing on finding better deals and using that as kind of a benchmark.
Yeah.
I was cash flowing, so I was happy with it, but I was like, okay, so we've done this. Let's try to find more of these and be strategic about it. So we wanted to keep them all in the same area. We loved the neighborhood, and it was, in my opinion, undervalued at the time. So we just said, let's focus here. All of our efforts will at least boost the neighborhood a little bit,
Yeah.
and maybe encourage other people to start cleaning up their properties as well. So that's what we've been doing.
It's great. Two things that came to mind there. First, I guess with the theft of tools. Yeah, you had talked about it costing you a fair amount of money to get everything back.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that came from that experience where you're not going to allow that to happen again.
Yeah, I take my tools home with me every night. I don't leave anything on the job site. I've thought about, getting alarm systems and stuff, but just the costs and the hassle, and they're not foolproof anyway. It's just like pack up the truck and take it home.
Yeah. So
we spend an extra hour, getting everything around, and sometimes it's extensive. We've got saws, we've got, everything on site. So this stinks running back and forth. Oh, we forgot the whatever. So we just bring it all, do work all day, and then take it all home.
Sure. And I think, I guess different strokes for different folks. Some people will do what you do. Other folks will, get the alarm systems and the video cameras and whatnot. And a lot of people won't do anything. And I think at some point in their career, they learn that you got to do something. You can't just leave stuff out there.
Yeah, because we worked there until 2:30 in the night. We got 2 feet of snow that night, and I was back for an appointment at 7:30 with somebody, and I'd been robbed in that window.
Wow.
Of like a blizzard too. Yeah. So it was a blizzard. They had like 3 hours in the middle of the night to do it, and they got it done.
Wow. Well, they're pretty hardcore up there in Rochester, man.
Yeah, they are.
Wow. Well, and the other thing that I wanted to ask you was what's the neighborhood? I don't mean specifically because most people won't know Rochester, but what level?
It's an up-and-coming neighborhood. It's connected very well with the downtown. Right now, Rochester's having issues with their downtown. They want to gain traction, but there's nothing there. They're trying to spur development in the city, so they're targeting different areas because the city's pretty big and it's pretty cancerous as far as bad sections of town creeping in all over the place. So a lot of people don't want to live in the city because number one, schools are terrible, so people with kids are not looking to live here, and then the younger people, they want to feel safe. They don't want to live in an area where they think they might get mugged or or whatever. So there's a lot of that. The positive momentum in the different neighborhoods really helps because we've got geographical barriers like the river and the interstate and then the universities. So if we form these pockets of nice real estate, we can get the people to come in, but if it's connected to some bad areas, it's really hard to convince people that it's a safe place to live and a desirable place to live, really.
Sure. Let me ask you, something came to mind that over the years, not as much recently, but I remember years ago, we'd see a lot of people coming around the site who were promoting turnkey properties in Rochester, come to Rochester, pick up some of these turnkeys and things like that. Have you seen any of those, and what does that look like? And
I would say that business model here is valid because there's so much cheap property, so many foreclosed properties, so many vacant properties that you can get really good deals. But like I said, you're going to be in a neighborhood where you're dealing with lower rents, you're dealing with the drama that comes with lower rents, evictions, whatever. Personally, I don't want that kind of tenant because it's more of a headache for me than the few dollars that I'm going to make off of it. So I try to stick in a nice neighborhood just because the drama, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to go into those neighborhoods because there's nothing fun about them. You just feel uncomfortable the whole time you're there.
So I'd say, I guess your advice then for somebody who lives out of state who might hear, hey, there's great deals in Rochester, you could pick up a great property with tons of cash flow. You say what?
I say yes, you can, but if you're not managing it, I would consider learning about the area, the neighborhood, the very specific neighborhood, the blocks, because it changes. And I don't know, property management companies might tell you they can rent it out for X amount of dollars, but in reality, that's not the market rate.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I think that's really important given that there are so many of these companies, and I think a lot of them are valid, and I think a lot of them are legitimate, but there's also a lot of folks who are scooping up and flipping properties in these bad pockets where you really don't want to be caught if you're thousands of miles away with no access. So.
Yeah, I like my area because I'm here and I can monitor it and I can kind of feel the pulse of it. But if I chose another neighborhood, it would be a whole new process. I'd be like, okay, let's kind of define the geography of this neighborhood, right? And then let's look at everything that's in the neighborhood, see who the people that are living there, see how they treat their properties. Do they have pit bulls that are just running around the neighborhood, not in fenced yards and stuff like that.
Yeah. Bars on windows.
Right.
Yeah.
Or boarded up windows or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. Well, so tell us a little bit about, what's your What's your bread and butter? What's the bread and butter property that you're trying to scoop up? And I guess what's your strategy been over the past couple of years, and where are you looking to go?
I think my strategy right now is number one, continue to work in the South Wedge because I love the neighborhood and I'm committed to it. There's a lot of other committed people. But I also am interested in central Pennsylvania because of the hydrofract industry. So as an aspiring developer, I think there's tons of opportunities down there. And I know that my first development is not going to be easy.
Let me cut you off for a second.
Yeah.
Can you explain to everybody what the hydrofract industry is?
Yes, hydrofracture is not a new technique. It's been going on since like the 1940s, 1950s. And basically it's getting methane gas out of the earth. Instead of going straight down, you go down and out. And so on one pad, you can have, say, 8 wells, and they all go down and out in a different direction. So it looks kind of like a spider web.
Okay.
Now they pool, the companies that they buy the mineral rights from the property owners, or they lease the mineral rights from the property owners, and then they pool all the leases, and then they try to find big areas where they can go in and put a pad. A pad will usually serve, say, 4 or 5 acres worth of property,
Okay.
and then anybody that owns that acreage gets royalties from the gas that's extracted from the
Gotcha.
pad.
And it sounds like in that area of Pennsylvania, it's becoming fairly commonplace.
Yeah, there's no Pennsylvania state tax on the gas industries
Okay.
for taking the gas out of the ground. And Pennsylvania is the only state that's doing that, which has just brought all of the money.
Gotcha.
All the private money's come. There's, oh, you're not going to tax us? Yes, we're going to build infrastructure, we're going to drill, and we're going to drill like crazy.
Gotcha. Oh, interesting. Cool. So you're thinking about expanding out of state, little.
Well, we've expanded out of state. I've got a couple of units in Williamsport. I picked up one property in Canton, which is in the heart of all this hydrofracture.
Okay.
So, we're going to continue to run the Rochester thing, and then we're also going to work on developing a Pennsylvania presence.
Cool. So who's managing those properties in Pennsylvania?
Right now, those properties are currently vacant. We're putting them through renovations.
Okay.
They'll be managed by me, kind of quasi from up here.
Yeah.
It's only 2.5 hours on the interstate.
That's not bad.
Down there. So yeah, and I've got contacts for contractors that I've known because I used to live in Williamsport.
Gotcha.
So if there was a pinch, I could call them up and say, hey.
So you're familiar with the area. You were prior to investing, which
I lived in Williamsport until I came to college, so until I was about 19.
Gotcha. Have you ever had anyone else manage your properties, or has it always been you?
It's always been me.
Okay.
I've read a lot of horror stories about who to trust. So at this point, I don't really need anybody managing them. There's enough issues that I'm already trying to get worked out that I don't need the burden of trying to go through somebody else for them to tell me what I already know is wrong for the most part.
Right. And I guess I'd be curious. Yeah, it's always fun to hear the horror stories and the positives and all that fun stuff. So I guess what would be one of those stories that really sticks out in your mind when people are like, hey, tell me about your real estate investing. You're like, oh man, I got to tell you about this.
For me?
Yeah.
Well, the first incident that I had was I had a friend that said, hey, my sister needs a place to live. She's moving to Rochester. I said, that's fine. Send her over. She signed a lease. She brought a tenant with her, and they had a falling out, and she left. So I got stuck with this other tenant that I didn't really know, and I didn't really qualify like I normally would because of the referral. And that bit me in the butt. She tried to forge some documents with my signature to collect different social services stuff. And I was getting letters in the mail from, welfare, from whatever, with my signature saying that, like, these other people live there and that they should be able to claim benefits. And I was like, well, these other people aren't even on a lease. This is not the lease that I use. So, and then she brought a couple pit bulls in when her boyfriend moved in, so I had to get them out of there. Luckily, it didn't go to eviction. They just, I was like, look, I'll give you a security deposit back. I'm not trying to screw you, but you got these dogs. You tried to forge this lease. Please just let it expire. So she left, and that was good.
Yeah.
And now most recently I took over a quad that has some drug dealers in it, and it's proven pretty difficult to get them out, even if you follow the procedure.
Yeah.
I went in and I filed holdover instead of something else, so I delayed myself 1 month there. So it's, school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
You could pay somebody $800 to do it, or you could learn how to do it yourself.
Yeah. And when you pay people to do it, they're not necessarily going to do it, as you said before, the way you hope. I've had that experience many times. So, it's rough. And the drug dealers, been there, man. That's not fun.
Yeah, and they don't pay rent either, so it's like
Yeah.
add insult to injury.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. What is your? I think a lot of people would say screening process is probably the most important part of.
Oh yeah, that's what I've refined the most, I think, since I started. Very thorough application, number one, and of course, getting to know the person while you're showing them the property helps a lot. Just asking them questions about their background, where they work, what they're doing. Just keeping it casual.
Yeah.
That kind of weeds out a lot of people, and then ultimately, I kind of use my discretion. I don't know if I should put that out there on the internet, as far as not having a standard criteria that says you have to have a credit score of this, or you have to, because I know a lot of people that do that. They say your credit has to be good enough to buy a house, or I'm not going to rent you a house. And I understand that some people have credit issues for not really that bad of reasons. Maybe they're in college or whatever. So I don't want to rule people out based on credit score. I kind of like using my personal judgment based on their character.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what we talked about management, we talked about screening a little bit. So you're actually scooping up these properties now. I'm assuming they're mostly REOs or pre-foreclosures, or what's your acquisition?
Yeah, we've done 2 short sales, both in New York. 1 foreclosure in New York, 1 foreclosure in Pennsylvania. Everything else has been MLS, no for sale by owner. I tried with 1 or 2 different people, and it just proved so frustrating in the end. Even where I was giving them what they wanted, they still couldn't understand. So I haven't pursued for sale by owner.
Okay.
After those 2, I just kind of, so I spent a lot of time dealing with it, and then I was like, no, it's not worth it.
So a fair amount of these properties that you're acquiring are properties that other people are passing on for one reason or another, and you see the gem inside the property itself.
Yep.
Okay.
Based on location and kind of our strategic holding, all of our properties are within the same zip code, and they're within the same neighborhood. 1 or 2 are in bordering neighborhoods, but for the most part, they can just consider the southeast section of the city.
Gotcha. And the advantage to that is
building a portfolio that at the end, if I just wanted to turnkey to somebody else, saying, look, all these properties are easy to manage. They're all within 1 or 2 miles of each other, or probably within 1 mile of each other. So instead of having this sporadic portfolio all over the place, then I could, just say, okay, here it is.
That's pass great. Off. What's your strategy for picking up tenants?
I've been using Craigslist primarily. There's a couple other local sites, but they don't give the results that Craigslist does. So usually I just do that.
Yeah.
I think it's the preferred method in this area. We've got a lot of college turnover through U of R, RIT, MCC, and then there's 4 or 5 other universities in the area.
Yeah.
So they all use Craigslist, and that seems to work pretty well. I think everybody's adopted it for the most part.
That's great. Nice and convenient, free, easy. Yeah, it's great. All right, so you've been doing this for a couple of years. You've made mistakes. You've learned a ton. I'm a new investor. I come up to you. I'm like, hey, Mark, you're pearls of wisdom. Tell me, what do I do? I want to be like you. I want to build up this portfolio. Give me a couple gems here.
I think the best piece of advice is just to save money.
Yeah.
Just stop spending it on stuff that you don't need to spend it on. I mean, luxury items are meant to be bought when you can afford luxury items, and I feel that I'm not in a position to be buying luxury items right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just buying what I need.
Yeah. Yeah, keeping your nose down and saving up, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Let me think. Is there anything else that you would want to talk about? Anything you want to share? Experiences? Any other type of things that you've gone through in your real estate investing that you think people might be interested in?
I would just say lending is tough right now, and be diligent and just keep talking to people and explore other ways of raising money
outside of traditional finance.
Yeah, that's why BiggerPockets is great. You can see what other people are doing to get capital, or use other people's capital, or however they're structuring their deals.
Gotcha.
Basically, just get deals done and just work on whatever you're passionate about. If you want to do a certain kind of deal, do that kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me jump on that lending bit for a quick second here. So, what are you? I guess what's your preferred method for financing your deals at this point?
Well, I'd like to keep, as much leverage as possible just because that amplifies the returns.
Yeah.
But in this environment, it was 90-10 when I started, and, they reduced it to 80-20. I haven't seen anybody come back with 90-10 offerings, and then there's been caps on a lot of the big companies like Bank of America. You can only have 4 mortgages in your name.
Yeah.
Where before you could have an unlimited amount of mortgages. So there's a lot more restrictions on lending than there were. So I think people that kind of came up through that and did well through that, they're fine because they've got portfolios that are highly leveraged and they're leveraged properly and they're cash flowing. So that's great. But now coming through that, you're not gonna get the same leverage that you could get before.
Right. Are you using private money at all?
I'm using some private money, yeah.
And how have you gone about finding private money sources?
Well, it's always very expensive, so I try to only use it when necessary and then just pay it back as quickly as possible.
Right.
So just kind of for bridging gaps, like if I need a little bit of cash real quick to do whatever.
Sure. But what's been, I guess, your method for actually finding that private money? Is it friends and family, or is it?
No, through bankers, because I go to talk to bankers about money and they're like, yeah, we can't do anything for you that's beneficial to you right now, but here, talk to this person. They deal with private money.
That's great advice. Advice. Now, do you? I think that's an important point to be talking to bankers and get to know those bankers who are in your area, because they are a great resource for actually finding cash, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And you'll walk in and they'll tell you right away. You'll tell them your situation and they'll be like, we can help you or we can't help you. If we can't, try this.
Yeah.
Try this person or try this bank so it's good.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. Cool. Well, anything else you want to add or
No, I don't think so.
That's it. Cool. Well, listen, it's been great talking to you again, everybody. This is Mark Updegraff. He is Slackadelic on BiggerPockets.com. So it's BiggerPockets.com/users/Slackadelic. If you're up in Rochester and looking to link up, he can be found at Wedge Redux. And are you on Twitter or Facebook or anything like that?
Yes, Wedge Redux on
Wedge
Twitter.
Redux.
I don't use Facebook very much.
Yeah, right on.
I don't know why.
Save it for another day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, man. All right, Mark. Well, it's a pleasure. Nice talking to you, and we'll look forward to sharing it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yep.